Hi folks, this is all the fruit, and nowadays hardly anybody remembers the tasty lotus plum. Yeah, it has been almost completely replaced by its relative, the kaki plum. Well, both of the genus Diospyrus of the Ebenaceae family, which means that the timber, among other things, is quite valuable. Maybe not in this one, I think this is still too young. The timber inside would be white. If you look at this beautiful old tree here with the 4 stems, the outer layer of the timber will be white, but the inside will be jet black, actually black as ebony, as those little statues people from Africa carve and sell. But the timber is by far not the most important part of this plant. Ebenaceae, a very important tropical family for timber, but they also have produced a lot of edible plants. Stuff like the velvet apple, the lotus plum, and most important of all, the kaki. Well, the kaki was cultivated for thousands of years in East Asia, while in West Asia and the Mediterranean, the lotus plum was important. It was actually very prominent even in literature. If you have read the Odyssey, well, one reason why Odysseus was the only one who returned from the Odyssey was that they found an island of the lotus eaters. Nowadays people think that those people were eating lotus fruits from ponds. Yeah, there is no pond here, but there was no oriental lotus in the Mediterranean at this time. But there was this stuff called lotus. So the stuff was so tasty that those Greeks just wanted to remain forever on the island, and basically it was as good as a drug. So very important plant for thousands of years in the West. And then the kaki plum came and basically dislodged it from its position. The funny thing is that here, before climate change, Germany was too cold for kaki plums, but still people did not cultivate lotus plums. Now you can cultivate kakis here, but you can also cultivate lotus. The problem is, in Heidelberg we have a lot of lotus plums. We have a couple of old trees, and we have a lot of feral seedlings. Let's see if this shrubbery here was full of feral lotus seedlings a couple years ago, but I think they cleaned them all away. We have lotus seedlings here in Heidelberg, 2 to 3 meters tall. Yeah, they're in other parts of the botanic garden, but here I think they cleaned them away. Well, those 2 trees produced hundreds, maybe thousands of seedlings, and even the seedlings are already flowering, and some of them are producing fruit. So very vigorous tree around here. There was only one problem. All those lotus plums in Heidelberg taste very bad. Like the most astringent kaki you can imagine. Well, for example, in the nearby city of Weinheim, there is a tree which also produces a lot of fruit, with very few seeds for some reason, but it still produces dozens of offspring, of seedlings, and those fruits are tasty. The fruits on this small tree, the big one for some reason is not very productive. I don't see a single fruit on it right now, while the small one has thousands. Well, it's not very tasty. It produces a lot of seeds, which often means that it's a more primitive, all the others will, that it's a more natural, more wild variety, but it tastes horrible. The only 2 times the fruits of this tree and of other trees in Heidelberg tasted good were once about 10 years ago, after very harsh winters, harsh frost for weeks and months. We hadn't seen that for decades. Then we had very harsh winters and the stuff was edible. Or after mild winters, like in March or so, but by then they were covered by black mold. Yeah, they were edible, but you had to suck on the black mold too. But now this year, after the record heat and drought and sunshine, those are tasty even at the end of October. I've never seen it, and I've known those kakis here for, over 20 years. Yeah. You can totally eat them. They taste a bit more boring than a kaki. and they are still a bit tart. But it's only the end of October, and they are still not detaching very easily from the branches. I kind of need to rip them off. Let's see, there seems to be a more ripe one. Okay, I managed to squeeze it, but you can see the ripe ones, when they are basically ripe, they are still kind of amber colored. When they are really ripe, they turn kind of bluish. Interesting taste. Taste is more complicated than that of a kaki. Less interesting and more complicated. There is still a remnant of tartness, but this tartness was only removed in very modern kaki varieties, so you cannot complain about a bit of tartness in lotus plums. Look at this flesh. It's sweet, it's quite aromatic. It's always very tart, except this year. Now I know why. For decades I thought that those plants in Heidelberg are a tart variety. No, they are probably just a variety from the Mediterranean or the Middle East, where they are used to very hot, dry and sunny summers. The summers in Germany just didn't do them any justice, and now this summer was basically Mediterranean in its heat and drought, and now they are edible. And I think in a couple weeks, when the last tartness has disappeared, they will be really delicious. You learn something new every day, and after this record drought and heat summer, there is not much fruit. The plants in Germany, they are not used to such summers. There's not much fruit, but we have stuff fruiting which I've never seen fruiting before. Stuff like bananas, ripe pistachios, ripe pineapple guavas, and those things finally being tasty. So folks, stay tuned for a lot more fruit videos from the beautiful and fruit-rich Heidelberg Botanic Garden, which you should definitely visit if you come to Heidelberg. And of course, if you don't want to miss any more of my videos, it's not enough to subscribe. You also need to press the little notification bell.